rolling. Because it's the last Monday before spring break. Remember, guys, no school on Friday. No school Friday. Friday's Good Friday. If you celebrate Easter, that kind of thing. Friday is Good Friday. So we start spring break Friday, and we won't see each other for 10 days till the 25th. That's our first day back. A couple of other announcements. Tomorrow. No, Friday. No, Friday. No, Ben. No, Ben, you don't have to wake up at 7. Friday, you're off. There's no school. And then there's no school until Monday the 25th. That's our first day back. So please, guys, please use the break if you're behind. Please use that opportunity to get caught up. Most of the assignments are completion grades or workbooks that you can do as many times as you want until you get the score you want. Okay, a number of us still are missing Unit 1 and 2 tests and the Unit 1 and 2 quizzes. You have up to 3 attempts on those, and if you need more, just reach out. All right, I'll check my email at the break at least once. Tomorrow there will be no 12 o'clock class session or 12:30 target session. I gotta be out for about 2 hours for an appointment. There will be a 2:30 target session. So if you do need help, that 2:30 session will be going on. Just no 12 or 12:30 session tomorrow. Okay. I will have the class recording up and posted before that 12 o'clock session is supposed to start. Okay. So again, no 12 or 12:30 session tomorrow. Okay. Here's that Pear Deck link one more time. And wrong. Call your parents. Get rolling. Only 9 of us have logged in out of the 37 here. Come on, guys. There it is again. I'm just going to spam your chat. Come on, come on, come on. Darn it. All right. There it is. That way you have all the opportunities to click. You have all the opportunity, any opportunity you want right there, Rose, to click the link. All right, so today we're doing lesson 4.2. We're continuing on with our civil rights unit. And today we'll be discussing the landmark case, Brown versus Board of Education. But first, guys, where's your stress level today? Where's your stress level at today? How you feel? Again, I think I'm here. I'm a 2. I'm a 2. Like Larry said, it's 4 days till spring break. It's the last week of testing. I just checked the failure rates, and out of like 184, that I'm not even gonna say. I think the number of kids failing this class currently is continuing to go down. So I gotta that always contributes to a lack of stress for me. That's a big uplifter for me that more and more kids are starting to pass. And if you're over here, what can I do to help? If you're on the other half of this desk this week, guys, this middle desk, how can I bring you down to the other side? Is there anything I can do for you? Are we just stressing because it's Monday? Are we stressing because we got testing this week? You know what? How can I help bring that down? Life's always gonna do that, Rose. There's always gonna be something. You just have to learn how to compartmentalize it, how to tackle it, how to work through it, because life is stressful, and that's not diminishing your feelings or anything. Just some basic hard truths. Find a way. How can we be productive with it? It's okay to be stressed. All right, let's look at today's learning target. Today we should be able to explain the significance of the case Brown versus Board of Education by comparing it to the case Plessy versus Ferguson. You're actually going to do that as your exit ticket today. Your exit ticket is you're going to do a Venn diagram comparing and contrasting these two court cases. Okay. Some important vocabulary. One we saw last week: segregation, docket, which is a court's list of cases, and then a couple words that we hear a lot today, and especially in class today. I hear the word racism used a lot for just really, in all honesty, when kids just disagree with what you say, they just throw out the term, well, that's racist, and it's like, no, not really. So I wanted to give you guys the textbook definitions of some of these terms, like discrimination, which is behaving differently, usually unfairly towards members of a group. Prejudice, which is a preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So, for example, an example of prejudice would be like you're walking down the street and you see somebody in like a sleeveless shirt with tattoos, and they're wearing spiked bracelets, and they have a mohawk and facial piercings and things like that. What do you automatically think about that person? Right? Those first thoughts, that's a prejudice. And think of it like this: you are prejudging somebody. Brooklyn says, "Hey, they're pretty cool." Or Kai says they're pretty cool. Maybe that's still a prejudice. It doesn't have to be negative. Next, racism is the belief that race is a primary determinant of human traits and capacities. That racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. Yes, Kai, like a bias. You're prejudging somebody before you get to, you can go talk to them, and they might be a college professor, right? They might be a scientist. They might be a doctor, right? You don't know anything about them. You're prejudging them based on by their appearance. It's not based on any reason or an actual experience. That's a prejudice. And then institutionalized racism. This is a term, again, that's thrown around a lot today, especially in politics. And again, if you pay attention to state politics, there's a current House Bill 616 that kind of deals with this in a sense. But institutionalized racism occurs when normal operations of apparently neutral processes systematically produce unequal results for majority and minority groups. So the example of this, guys, would be like Jim Crow laws, right? The government is an institution. So when the government passes a law that produces unequal results for minority groups, like Jim Crow laws, right? That's a form of institutionalized racism. Right. So again, these terms, not to sway an opinion or dump an opinion on you. I just want to make sure you guys are understanding these terms, because we're going to be using them in this unit a lot. All right. So let's look at the quick case review of Brown versus Board of Education. Right? This occurred during the Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 60s, and the Civil Rights Movement and the Supreme Court are inseparable. Throughout American history, African Americans used the judiciary, the Supreme Court, to assert their civil liberties. They say, like, hey, the Constitution that we say we are, that says we're citizens, says we have these rights. We're not getting these rights, and the judiciary's job is to uphold the Constitution, right? They determine what is constitutional, what is unconstitutional. So historically, African Americans have had to go to those lengths, using the Supreme Court and the judiciary, to just get their civil liberties that everyone else in the country had. It took a century of trials and disappointments before progress begins to develop. Again, guys, remember, real change takes time. It's not a snap of the fingers, right? It's not an Amazon Prime of like, hey, this law gets passed and now everybody's doing it. It takes time. Then it took the struggles of countless Americans to force the legal tide towards justice. It took a lot of people it takes a lot of people to make real change occur. All right, so we're going to watch this quick 2-minute video about Plessy versus Ferguson in regards to Brown versus Board of Education. So real quick, let me get it loaded up for you, and then I'll stop talking. Real quick, can everybody hear the video? I have it paused right now, but can you all hear it? All right. For some reason I can't. Oh, because my volume's down. That's why. All right. So that's just a brief description of Plessy versus Ferguson. And how well do you feel like you understand that case? Again, this establishes the separate but equal. A man who is considered 7/8 black sits in a white train car instead of the colored train car, as they called it, and gets arrested and sues. And the Supreme Court decides that this segregation is legal. You can have separate as long as the separate is equal. Okay, so this is what justifies separate water fountains, separate restaurants, separate schools. All right, this separate but equal clause is the precedent, as it's called, for segregation. Okay. If you are here, let me know what I can do to get you here or here. Okay. Please send me a message. How can I better explain this to you? And remember, when you see Plessy versus Ferguson, I want you to think separate but equal. All right. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. All right. So the United States is going to have a history of segregation, and it's not going to start with Plessy versus Ferguson. It's actually going to start with the Dred Scott decision in Scott versus Sanford, and Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896. And that's going to say African Americans have sought to challenge institutionalized discrimination in the courts, as we mentioned. However, many major civil rights Supreme Court cases get argued during the 20th century, so during the 1900s. Following the separate but equal precedent set by Plessy versus Ferguson, many states established and enforced policies of institutionalized segregation, meaning the government passed laws for segregation. Molly, what I want you to understand about Plessy versus Ferguson is separate but equal. Okay, that's what you need to know. Separate but equal for blacks and whites. Okay. Whites and blacks did not eat in the same restaurants. They did not swim in the same community pools or attend the same public schools. There were separate facilities for blacks and whites, and this became the norm
right? This became normal in many public places. In 1951, a challenge to the segregation of public schools arose when a group of 17 parents filed a class action lawsuit against the Board of Education in Topeka. The Topeka plaintiffs claimed that legalized segregation did not provide equal services for African American students. Oliver Brown became the group's spokesperson, and he stated that his daughter should not have to be bused to an African American school. This says over a mile away, but this is a typo. It was several miles away when they lived blocks from a white elementary school, right? So how the public school system works, guys, is basically they build a school in the neighborhood and everybody in the neighborhood goes to that school, right? That's how public education works for like cities, small towns, rural areas, right? Everybody in that surrounding area goes to that school. Well, when schools were segregated, you could live down the street from a public school if you were black, but you would have to go to the black school, which might be in a separate town or in a different county or on the other side of town from where you lived, right? And the argument was because they lived down the street from a public school and their property taxes funded that school, right? It wasn't a separate but equal. The parents who filed with Brown also wanted to enroll their children into local schools. At the time, many Kansas schools were reserved for white students only. An 1879 law exempted some of the state's cities from providing equal facilities to African Americans. So a law in past, what would we say? Segregation. 20 years before Plessy versus Ferguson tried to supersede that separate but equal. In Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, the plaintiffs and their counsel claimed that this state law violated federal law, specifically the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment. The NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, stepped in to assist the plaintiffs. But the federal district court ruled in favor of the Board of Education at first, right? So at first, they lost. Okay, so we got a quick video about Brown versus Board of Education. Let me look it up for you. Thank you, Ben. Again, the parents are going to appeal. At first, they lose, so they appeal, and it goes to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court puts this case on their docket, puts it on their list of cases they're going to be heard. The NAACP, they use their chief legal counsel, Thurgood Marshall, who will eventually become the first African-American male to hold a seat as a Supreme Court justice. This is significant to today because we just confirmed Judge Ketanji Brown to be the first African-American female to hold a seat on the Supreme Court. So Thurgood Marshall becomes the first African-American male. And it's going to take the Supreme Court 2 hearings. They're going to listen to this case twice to render a decision. But in 1954, they're going to hand down their decision on Brown versus Board of Education. And it's going to be unanimous, meaning every justice is going to agree that this case is based on the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, that separate but equal violates, i.e. segregation violates the 14th Amendment, and it is unconstitutional. And the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment says the state cannot deny a person equal protection under the laws of the United States. So that means the law applies to everybody, regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of wealth. The law applies to everybody the same. So that means you cannot have separate schools, separate but equal schools. Everybody can go to the same schools. Everybody can use public restrooms, things like that. The decision has a huge impact as it completely overturns Plessy versus Ferguson. So again, Plessy versus Ferguson is separate but equal. Brown versus Board of Education overturns that. And the practice of institutionalized discrimination and institutionalized racism begins to erode. Right. So again, those Jim Crow laws, those segregation laws, those start to erode and go away. What really changes their mind is the court. There we go. Sorry, guys. What really changes their mind is the Supreme Court becomes alarmed at the inferiority of segregated schools that African American students have to attend. Okay. And again, it's a problem that most white people never had to experience. They never had to see it. So, and that whole out of sight, out of mind, right? Why are we going to worry about a problem that's not affecting us? You can say that about a lot of things today. But some of the inferior things that they were concerned about was poor cafeteria food, outdated textbooks, dilapidated buildings. These kids were going to school in buildings that were literally falling down. And Brown versus Board of Education integrates all public schools throughout the nation. But integration is going to come slowly, and it's going to be painful in many places, not just in the South. Right? Anybody see the movie Remember the Titans on Disney, the football movie with Denzel Washington? The whole premise of that movie is the black school and the white school integrate, and it's about bringing these two different football teams and coaching staffs together, and they're fighting racism, and they become one team and one brotherhood, right? That's what that movie's about, is about integration because of Brown versus Education. States throughout America will be hesitant to integrate their public school systems. There will be incidents in Arkansas, Alabama, Texas, and Florida that will highlight the volatility of this decision when these factions attempted to block African American students from attending traditionally all-white schools. We're going to see in Arkansas, it's the Arkansas 9, right? The little girls, like first, second, third graders, little girls trying to go to school, and they're going to get blocked by the Arkansas National Guard, and the governor of Arkansas is going to block, or by the state police, I'm sorry, not the National Guard, the state police. They're going to block these little girls from attending public school because they're black. And it's going to take, President Eisenhower is going to literally call in the National Guard. He's going to supersede the governor of Arkansas's decision, and use the military to escort these little girls just so they can go to school. Got a few minutes yet, GK on? All right. So how do you feel about your understanding of Brown versus Board of Education? Now remember, Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy versus Ferguson is separate but equal. Brown versus Board of Education overturns that. No more separate but equal. That's what Brown versus Board of Education says. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. Brown versus Board of Education, no more separate but equal. A couple of us were a little in the middle, stuck in the middle with you. Some of us we got it, and that's good. Because your exit ticket, as I mentioned, it's going to be, you're going to complete this Venn diagram. Compare and contrast. How are they similar? What are they different? What's different about them? Try to get at least 3 for each. Okay? Try to get 3 differences, and you can use Google. Tell me 3 distinct differences about these 2 court cases. Because if you do that, that should allow us to hit our learning target for today by telling us the significance of these cases by comparing them and contrasting them. And then after that, your assignment for the day is Workbook 4.2. And everything from today's lesson comes from Workbook 4.2. And it should only be 2 or 3 questions. It should be an easy 100 for you. All right. And with that, guys, it's 11 o'clock. Don't forget about the target sessions at 12:30 and 2:30 if you need help. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I am here for you. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day. Get to science class. Don't forget about, again, I know spring break's coming up. I know we're excited. Don't forget about the stuff. We got a bunch of stuff due. I set the due dates back. Check your to-do list because there's stuff due on April the 25th. Right, this workbook for today, that's not due until the 29th. I've got that set the Friday we come back. Okay. Eventually, hopefully within the next, a week or 2 after spring break, our due dates will even back out. Okay. Bye, Rose. Bye, Ben. Bye, Larry. Bye, Carissa. Bye, Jakayon. You guys have a great day.